Welcome, my friends, to Shaking the Salt with Dr. Peppers. At the end of the message, stay tuned if you want to contact me for any reason, including prayers. Thank you, and I'm Dr. Peppers, Shaking the Salt. Here we go. It seems like in the last couple of weeks, actually, I have had several friends who have told me that it's time to quit for them. I have one who has been in ministry with children, and she just said, I've gotten too old. I know it's time. God made it perfectly clear and physically with my body, but also emotionally, that I just wasn't going to be able to do this. And if you can't do it physically or mentally or whatever, it is time to quit, I suppose. I have another friend who's been a long-time missionary in Africa, and he and his wife have started many churches, and they've dealt with many situations where they were almost killed several times, but they said it's time to quit. And I remember when I was on radio in St. Louis for 10 years, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt when it was time to quit. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I knew I wasn't going to just quit life or quit serving God or quit doing something, but I too knew when it was time. You know, there are seasons of our life when God makes it clear, enough is enough. And when you've been in that season and you have the opportunity to step down, you know, some people can't financially. Some people can't because they don't have anywhere else to turn, or maybe they depend on someone in that organization, or maybe it's a family or a friend that you just can't quit. So I know that as each one of these this week or last week have told me it's time for them to quit, I knew one thing for sure. They weren't quitting. They were just going from one job, one ministry, one situation to another. And that's what we do through life. I knew when it was time for me to leave teaching. I didn't quit teaching because I went on to teach at Webster University off and on for 10 years. I did radio and television for 10 years. But I knew when my husband said it was time to retire that I had to sever the ties in Missouri in the St. Louis area in order to move to Florida, as we had always wanted to do, and as I guess I had promised him we would do one day. And I remember him looking at me one time, maybe 3 years before we had even started getting our house ready to sell in St. Louis, and he said, "Are we ever really going to go to Florida?" I said, "Yes, sweetie." And he said, "I know we've planned on it. I know you've promised me you would, but are we really going to do it?" And I said, "Yes, of course." But we made a list of things we needed to do before we left. We had to get the house in order, a billion things to do there. It was a big house, and we were downsizing, moving to a small house. All of my family and my aunts and uncles and cousins, besides my mom and dad and brother, were all in St. Louis. And my dad had been sick, and I was taking him daily to physical, it wasn't actually recreation, and it wasn't actually a time where he was having a doctor's appointment for rehab, but he had to keep moving. And as he would even say, I'd say, "Dad, what's the saying? Either use it or," and he'd say, "lose it." And I'd say, "That's right." I believe it was no coincidence that we closed on our house in St. Louis and actually signed for our home here in Florida on the very morning, 2 hours before my daddy passed away at St. Luke's Hospital. We had time to get over there where we were all standing around the bed again, as we had done all week. And we had to close and do all of the sales by proxy from Florida to St. Louis. But it just worked out so perfectly, and it was such a confirmation of God's will. I know that you are probably like I am, and you wish we would receive a handwritten note or a sign in the sky that says it's time to quit, or it's time to begin, or it's time to do this or not do that. And yet we don't. We have to make the preparation and the plans and know that God will reveal when the timing is right and where it is we are to go and what we are supposed to do. But what does he actually say about quitting? What does the Bible say about quitting? You know, it commands us actually in most scriptures not to quit. And when we get that defeated feeling, it even says to endure, and in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So we have to learn more about what God says about quitting. In 1 Corinthians 9, he says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." Now, this to me is hilarious because I can't run but probably 100 steps at the most, actual running. I can fast walk and I can slowly jog in place, but running has never been one of my fortes. There is something in, where's this one? 1 Corinthians 16 that says, "Be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, and be strong." He himself, in 1 Peter 2, bore our sins in his body on the cross so that we might die to sin and live for righteousness. And he tells us to not give up in 2 Chronicles, for your work will be rewarded. I have had such amazing rewards throughout my life, in all of my work, in all of my teaching, and in all of the speaking and the television and radio, and just in leading groups and in being in women's ministry. And I have just loved everything I have done. And so has my husband. He received so many rewards and awards for his work in chemistry, and as he worked in the various church capacities that he has. And even though we're now in probably chapter 4, I guess you would say act 4 of the finale, heading toward it in our lives, we have learned that each one of these, scriptures and people and godly friends, men and women through the years have told us, do not give up. Do not quit. Do not give up the race. Well, the race is big and there are many capacities, and yet we know there are times when it is perfectly clear we are to step down from one aspect only to see that God does make it very clear. Here is the next chapter. When I said it is time, 10 years after I had been doing radio, and I was doing radio 3 hours a day, prime time driving Monday through Friday, after teaching in the high school all day long, and then after the radio going to either direct plays and musicals back at the school or teaching a night course at Webster University, and I was just overdoing it. So when I stepped down, I knew it was the right timing, and it was 1 month after that I received a call from a friend of mine who was a television producer in Quincy, and she said, "Would you be willing to do a weekly women's program or an outreach program for men and women on TV?" And it was time. God makes it clear when it's time. So for my friends who are moving from one aspect of your life, whether retiring from your job and moving into something else, or going from one ministry to another, or from an aspect of teaching, maybe in one area, to teaching in a school or to serving on a board or whatever it is, you will find there is another aspect of life where we are never allowed to just quit. We don't get to just sit back and eat bonbons and watch TV and look out over the lake, although I would love to do that. The fleshly side of me says, yes, you can, yes, you can. But the Christian side of me says there's too much hurting in this world. There are too many people that need your help. There are so many that need to hear what God says. You can't give up. And so I won't. Will I move from area to area? Yes. Will my friends? Yes. I implore of you to never give up, never quit, but just simply say this season is over and it's time to move into the next season. Or chapter 2 of my life is complete, time to move into chapter 3. And in your mid-70s, you have to admit, you're probably in chapter 4, if not heading toward the end. So my friend, whatever it is, I pray that God will use you, bless you, and make it absolutely clear where and what you are to be doing, because that is the greatest reward in life. I've done that several times through my life, and I thank Him for the opportunity to do it again. I'm Dr. Pepper, shaking the salt. Thanks for staying on, my friend. If you would like to contact me, visit saltandlightministry.com. If you want to share your story with me, ask a question, have me come speak to your group, or maybe just request prayer. Once again, saltandlightministry.com. Thanks and God bless.